There is a quiet kind of person in this world who moves through life differently. Someone who slips away from the party early, unnoticed, completely relieved to escape into welcoming silence. Someone who sits alone at coffee shops for hours, watching rain trace slow lines down the window, perfectly content in their own peaceful silence while the world rushes past. Someone who, when given the choice between a crowded room buzzing with conversation and an empty one filled only with thoughts and stillness, will always choose the empty one without hesitation. And if you are that person, if you have ever felt the strange, undeniable pull towards silence, while the rest of the world rushes past in noise and chaos and endless, exhausting chatter, then this is for you. Because what most people call loneliness, you might call peace. What others see as isolation, you experience as freedom. What the world labels as strange or antisocial, you know as necessary for your survival and sanity. And the psychology behind this preference runs far deeper than most people will ever truly understand. Society has developed a particular way of making solitary people feel broken and fundamentally defective. We are told from earliest childhood that popularity matters above everything else, that the person with the most friends wins some invisible competition everyone seems to be playing. That being alone is a punishment, a failure, a clear sign that something went wrong somewhere in your development. We watch movies where the hero is always surrounded by loyal companions who would sacrifice everything for them. We scroll through social media where everyone seems to be at parties and gatherings with their closest friends, smiling brightly in every photograph. And we wonder quietly, what is wrong with us for wanting none of what everyone else craves? But here is the truth that no one talks about openly in our extrovert celebrating culture. Some minds are simply built differently than others from the very beginning. Some brains are wired from birth to naturally seek depth over breadth, stillness over constant stimulation, rich inner worlds over exhausting outer performances designed to impress others. And far from being a flaw or deficiency or something to be ashamed of, this preference for solitude might actually be one of the most powerful and profoundly misunderstood psychological traits a person can possess. So if you have ever wondered why you feel most alive when completely alone with your thoughts, if you have questioned whether your need for space makes you strange or somehow less than others, let us walk together through the hidden corridors of the solitary mind. By the end of this journey, you will understand not only why you are the way you are, but why the world desperately needs people like you. The first thing to understand about people who prefer solitude is that their brains literally work differently in measurable ways. This is not metaphor or exaggeration. Neuroscience has shown through countless studies that introverted individuals process dopamine, the brain chemical associated with reward and pleasure, in a fundamentally distinct way compared to their extroverted counterparts. When an extrovert walks into a party full of strangers and loud music, their brain releases dopamine in response to the social stimulation, the noise, the unfamiliar faces, the constant stream of interaction. All of it feels rewarding on a deep neurological level they cannot control. Their brain sends a message that says more, give me more, this is wonderful, and I want it to continue. But for the person who prefers solitude, the entire equation is completely reversed in ways that profoundly shape their experience of social situations. Too much external stimulation actually overwhelms their dopamine system in uncomfortable and draining ways that extroverts rarely experience or understand. Instead of feeling energized and excited by crowds and constant conversation, they feel progressively drained and depleted with each passing hour they spend in stimulating environments. Instead of seeking more input and interaction, they instinctively seek less. Their brain is fundamentally wired to find its deepest reward in quieter, more internal experiences that require no external input. A good book read slowly on a rainy, peaceful afternoon with no interruptions. A solitary, contemplative walk through autumn woods with only birdsong and rustling leaves for company. An entire evening spent thinking about nothing and everything at once, with no obligation to share those precious thoughts with anyone else. This is precisely why forcing a naturally solitary person into constant social situations feels so deeply and physically exhausting to them in ways that extroverts struggle to comprehend. It is not shyness hiding behind convenient excuses. It is not social anxiety that therapy could somehow cure. It is a fundamental difference in how the brain naturally processes and responds to the world around it. And once you truly understand this simple but profound truth about neurological differences, everything else about the solitary person begins to make perfect sense. Beyond dopamine processing, there is another critical difference in how solitary minds operate that researchers have discovered through brain imaging studies. Studies have consistently shown that introverts demonstrate significantly increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated part of the brain associated with deep, reflective thinking, careful planning, complex problem solving, and rich internal reflection. While extroverts tend to process experiences quickly and then move on to the next interesting thing, solitary individuals naturally linger with their experiences far longer. They analyze what happened from multiple angles and perspectives. They contemplate deeper meanings and implications that others miss entirely. They turn moments over and over in their minds like precious stones being slowly polished by flowing water, until those moments finally reveal their hidden meanings and lessons. This is precisely why people who prefer solitude often seem lost in thought, even during ordinary, everyday moments when nothing particularly interesting seems to be happening. Because they genuinely are lost in thought and perfectly happy to be there. Their brains are constantly engaged in a rich, fascinating internal dialogue that requires no outside input to sustain itself. They are having deep, meaningful conversations with themselves about ideas that fascinate them, exploring possibilities and scenarios, replaying important memories to understand them better, imagining futures that no one else can see. Imagine the mind of a solitary person as a vast, ancient ocean stretching far beyond every visible horizon. On the surface, everything might appear completely calm, even still, entirely unremarkable to passing observers who only glance quickly. But beneath that quiet surface lies an entire universe of thought and emotion and imagination that most people never glimpse or even suspect exists. Coral reefs of accumulated memory stretch in elaborate, beautiful formations. Schools of ideas swim together in intricate, meaningful patterns that reveal themselves slowly. Deep trenches of serious contemplation descend into mysterious darkness where profound insights wait patiently to be discovered by those brave enough to dive down. The person who prefers solitude is absolutely not empty or boring or lacking rich inner life, as some might assume. They are oceanic in their depth and complexity, and they have learned that the most meaningful discoveries in life happen when you dive deep, rather than skim endlessly along the surface, where most people spend their entire lives. This understanding brings us naturally to something psychologists and introverts alike commonly call the social battery, a concept that perfectly captures the everyday lived experience of those who need solitude to function well. Think of social interaction as a form of significant energy expenditure, like physical, exercise for the mind that inevitably leaves you tired afterward and in need of recovery. Every single conversation draws from a finite reserve of available energy. Every meeting or gathering costs something that must eventually be repaid through rest. Every phone call and every visit steadily depletes resources that take real meaningful time to replenish fully back to baseline. For some fortunate people, that reserve of social energy is vast and seemingly bottomless, and replenishes with truly remarkable speed. They can socialize happily for hours upon hours and feel charged up and ready for more afterward, as if interaction itself were fuel for their soul. But for the person who prefers solitude, the battery is notably smaller and charges much more slowly than they sometimes wish it would. This fundamental difference is not a weakness or limitation to be ashamed of. It is simply a different energy economy that requires different and more careful management strategies. Consider a composite profile based on common patterns observed in many people who share this trait. A person who works in a modern open office environment and spends the entire exhausting day in meetings, hallway conversations, collaborative sessions, and team discussions where they must be constantly engaged and responsive. By the time evening finally comes and the demanding workday mercifully ends, they feel completely and utterly drained of all energy and motivation. Their loving partner wants to go out to dinner tonight with mutual friends. Their extended family wants to gather this weekend for a celebration and catch up on everyone's lives. But all this person wants with every fiber of their tired being is silence. A dark, quiet room with absolutely no demands being made on them. A chance to simply exist peacefully without any expectations being placed on their attention or their limited remaining energy. This is absolutely not antisocial behavior that should worry anyone or suggest deeper problems. This is not depression or dysfunction or something broken that needs to be fixed. This is simply a completely depleted battery desperately seeking the charge it needs to function tomorrow. And the only way to recharge it properly is through solitude spent in restorative, peaceful quiet, away from all stimulation. Understanding this dynamic fundamentally changes everything about how we should view the need to be alone. It is not rejection of others or lack of genuine love for family and friends who want our company. It is preservation of self and maintenance of mental health and sustainable functioning. The person who cancels plans to stay home alone is not being rude or unreasonably selfish, as others might unfairly judge. They are being honest about what their mind and body genuinely require to function properly. And in a world that constantly demands our attention from every possible direction without rest or understanding, the ability to protect inner resources is not just healthy behavior. It is absolutely essential for long-term well-being. There is something else important that happens in solitude that rarely gets discussed or properly appreciated. When the noise of the external world fades away completely, observation becomes sharper and clearer. Perception deepens in unexpected and revealing ways. The solitary person notices things that others miss entirely because they are not constantly distracted by the draining need to perform or engage or respond to every stimulus demanding attention. They watch with fresh, unhurried eyes that take in details others overlook. They listen with full, undivided attention that catches subtleties others never hear. They absorb details and patterns and subtle connections that rush past others completely unnoticed. Some of the greatest artists, writers, philosophers, scientists, and thinkers throughout all of human history were people who strongly preferred solitude to constant company. They understood intuitively that genuine creativity absolutely requires protected space and time away from interruption. Original ideas and novel insights do not emerge from crowded rooms full of competing voices and constant interruption. They emerge instead in the fertile silence between thoughts when the mind can wander freely. In the pregnant pause between breaths, when awareness expands. In the long, unhurried hours when the mind is finally free to wander wherever it wishes, without being constantly called back to social obligation and external demand. When a person who prefers solitude sits alone for hours seemingly doing nothing productive, they are not actually doing nothing as it might appear to outside observers. They are doing perhaps the most important work any human mind can do. They are allowing their subconscious to process accumulated experiences at its own natural pace, to make unexpected connections between disparate ideas that seemed unrelated, to create new understandings that did not exist before. This is precisely why so many breakthrough ideas throughout history have come to people in the shower, on long, solitary walks through nature, or in the quiet hours before dawn, when the rest of the world is still asleep. The solitary mind knows instinctively what science has only recently confirmed, that genuine insight and creative breakthrough require incubation time, and proper incubation requires protected space. But here is exactly where the psychology of solitude becomes genuinely complicated, because even those who strongly prefer to be alone are still fundamentally human at their core, and humans, at their deepest biological core, are social creatures shaped by millions of years of evolution in groups and tribes. We evolved in small, tight-knit communities where belonging meant survival and exclusion meant death. We are wired for connection at a biological level that we cannot simply override or ignore. This fundamental truth creates an interesting and sometimes genuinely painful tension in the heart of every solitary person throughout their entire life. A pull in two directions at once that never fully resolves. The need for space battles constantly against the equally strong need for belonging and acceptance. The desire for quiet peace wars silently with the fear of being forgotten by those we love most. This is the central conflict that every person who prefers solitude must learn to navigate skillfully throughout their lives. How do you honor your genuine need for space while still maintaining the meaningful connections that give life its richness? How do you explain to the people who love you that your absence is not abandonment or lack of caring? How do you build a satisfying life that respects both your introversion and your fundamental humanity? The answer lies in understanding the crucial difference between loneliness and solitude. These two words are often used interchangeably in casual conversation, but they describe completely different human experiences that should never be confused. Loneliness is the pain of unwanted isolation that you did not choose. It is the ache of being surrounded by many people but feeling utterly unseen by all of them. It is the hollow sensation of having no one to call when something wonderful or terrible happens in your life. Loneliness is a wound that hurts and demands healing. Solitude, on the other hand, is a conscious, deliberate choice made freely. It is the decision to step away from the crowd, not because you have been excluded or rejected, but because you recognize your authentic need for restoration and peace. Solitude is not empty despite outward appearances. It is full of the self in all its complexity and richness. It is where you go to remember who you actually are when no one is watching or expecting anything from you. It is the quiet garden where your truest thoughts are allowed to grow without judgment or interference. The person who prefers solitude is not lonely in any meaningful sense. They are simply far more selective about how they choose to spend their limited social energy. They choose depth over breadth every single time the choice is offered. A few close and genuine connections over dozens of shallow, meaningless acquaintances. An evening of meaningful conversation that actually matters over hours of forgettable small talk. Quality over quantity in every single interaction they choose to have. And yet, there is often a fear that lives quietly beneath this preference, like something lurking in deep water. A worry that by choosing solitude so often, you might somehow be left behind while life happens elsewhere without you. That the world and people in it will move on without you while you sit alone in your quiet room. That friends and family you love will eventually stop inviting you to things because you said no too many times. This fear is real and deserves acknowledgement and compassion, because the person who prefers solitude is not immune to the universal human need for love and acceptance and belonging. They simply experience and express that need in different ways than others might expect. The key is honest, clear communication practiced consistently over time. Learning to say, "I need some time alone" in a way that the other person does not hear, as "I do not want you around." Learning to set firm boundaries that protect your precious energy without building walls that isolate your heart from love. Learning that the right people will understand your needs without resentment, and that those who cannot respect your need for space might not be the right people for your life after all. There is a particular kind of strength that develops gradually in solitude, like a tree growing slowly in a quiet forest over many seasons. A resilience that comes from learning to be your own best company through all circumstances. The person who is genuinely comfortable alone has psychological resources that many others lack entirely. They know how to self-soothe when distressed without needing others. They know how to entertain themselves without boredom. They know how to sit with difficult emotions and process them without needing to distract themselves immediately with noise or activity. In a world that seems to fear silence more than almost anything else, the person who embraces quiet stillness has developed a genuine superpower. They are not dependent on external validation for their fundamental sense of worth. They do not need constant entertainment streaming at them to feel alive. They have cultivated over time an inner world rich enough to sustain them through any outer circumstance. Preferring solitude does not mean rejecting all human contact or becoming a hermit forever. The healthiest expression of this trait is balance, carefully maintained, knowing when to engage fully and when to retreat to restore yourself. Understanding that both genuine connection and restorative solitude are necessary for a complete human life. The person who prefers solitude often makes an excellent friend precisely because they value close relationships so highly. They do not spread themselves thin across dozens of superficial connections. Instead, they invest deeply in the few relationships they actively choose to maintain. As we approach the heart of this exploration, let us talk openly about what solitude truly represents on the deepest level. At its core, the preference for solitude is a form of self-respect made tangible through daily action. It is the recognition that your inner life genuinely matters, that your thoughts and feelings deserve space to exist and develop, that you are valuable enough to protect, even when that protection means guarding yourself from the demands of a world that expects constant availability. In a culture that relentlessly celebrates busyness as the highest virtue, choosing stillness is an act of quiet rebellion. The person who prefers solitude has learned something essential that many people never discover. That validation begins within your own heart. That lasting peace is not found in external achievements or in the approval of others, but in the quiet acceptance of your own true nature. there is a particular clarity that comes only from spending meaningful time alone with yourself. When the voices and opinions of others fade into the distance, you can finally hear your own voice clearly. When the expectations that the world places upon you fall away, you can discover what you actually want for yourself. Solitude is where the soul speaks loudest, and those who take time to truly listen receive wisdom that the perpetually busy never have the chance to hear. Perhaps you are reading these words and recognizing yourself clearly for the first time. Perhaps you have spent years feeling guilty about your need for space, apologizing for canceling plans, forcing yourself into social situations that always left you feeling empty and exhausted. If this describes your experience, then let these words serve as your permission slip. Let this be the validation you have been waiting for from someone who genuinely understands. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken or defective or missing some essential quality that everyone else possesses. You are simply a different kind of person following a different path. A person who finds meaning in silence. A person who thinks deeply and feels strongly and needs solitude the way others need company. And that is not merely acceptable. It is beautiful and valuable and necessary in this noisy world. So honor your need for space without apology or guilt. Protect your solitude like the precious resource it truly is. Build a life that allows generously for both meaningful connection and necessary retreat. Find people who understand intuitively that your absence is never rejection, but simply self-care. And know that in your quiet moments alone, you are doing some of the most important work any human being can do. You are becoming more fully yourself. The preference for solitude is not a problem to solve or a flaw to correct. It is a gift waiting to be embraced. And those who learn to embrace it fully discover something that changes everything about their lives. That being alone is not the opposite of being loved. That silence is not the absence of meaning, but often its deepest source. That the richest life is not always the busiest or most social one. Sometimes, the richest life is the quietest one. The one lived in harmony with your own nature. The one where you finally stop apologizing for who you are and start celebrating it instead. This is the psychology of people who prefer solitude. Not a disorder to be diagnosed or a dysfunction to be treated, but simply a different and equally valid way of being fully human in this world. A path that leads to unusual depth and unexpected creativity and hard-won self-knowledge. So the next time you feel the pull towards silence calling you away from noise and company, follow it without hesitation. The next time your soul asks for space to breathe, give it that space generously. And the next time anyone questions why you need so much time alone, remember this simple truth. You do not owe anyone an explanation for being exactly who you are. Your solitude is sacred ground. Your quiet is genuine power. And your way of moving through this world is exactly right for you. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If these words resonated somewhere deep inside you, if you felt truly seen or understood in some meaningful way, perhaps share your thoughts below. Tell others what solitude truly means in your own life. And until we meet again in another quiet moment, may you find peace in your silence and strength in your stillness.